tetsubishi. These nasty little, well, iron diamonds. Tetsu, iron or steel. Bishi is diamond, because no matter how this falls, it's always going to have a point sticking upwards. I would consider these shuriken. Not only are they made very similar to shuriken, but the idea is that you would throw them at your adversary or sprinkle them on the ground to invite an adversary or to protect your retreat. In many cases, that's kind of it. That's this tool summed up. A great part of it is that anyone can use this tool with very little training. You just need to be able to throw it. And even in that case, you don't even need to throw it well if you're covering your retreat. There's different types of tetsubishi. You would have a natural tetsubishi, which could be chestnut shells that have dried in such a way. There's what I would find in my area, which would be thorned trees, that if you cut them in a certain way, you're able to get those spikes facing upwards. You could make a simple tetsubishi out of mild steel by just cutting and bending with no heat treating. Or you could do something like these. This would be considered, I would consider this a swordsmith's tool. Like parentheses, because I have to get off topic for a moment, that when in shuriken, in researching the sanben, the throwing stars, there was throwing stars made by swordsmiths and then throwing stars just made by regular folk. Swordsmiths ones were always more, in a way, spectacular, much more finish. And in a sense, it would have more finish than needed for something that is quite a throwaway tool. I'm going to take that inspiration for mine, as this is it is a modern, but probably about 100-year-old spring steel. It was a coil off of a farm equipment that's 2 1/8, 2 1/4, half-inch round, hammered down, fast forward. That means that these have a bounce, and it means that the points, well, it stays very sharp. I'm going to stop there because I'm going to have a whole video dedicated solely to how these are made and why they're like that. And for this point, all I need to know is there's spring, and I like the fact that there's spring to these. Having a lot of them is of benefit, but having a lot of them also means you're going to stab yourself. Oh, I have stabbed myself so many times. These are cleaned with an oil with peppermint, as traditionally a clove oil would have been used because it's got an antiseptic and an antibacterial properties. I'm just not a big fan of that scent, so I use peppermint. So it means these are all clean. For holding them though, no matter what, when you have to get them out of a box, when you get them out of storage, you just need to be careful, but I think everyone understands that. For application, I like the idea of 3. 4 seems a little cumbersome, and there's other reasons 4 doesn't work so well. And for throwing, I like thinking of it as a shuriken, that there's the no rotational spin. So you guide it with the index finger, and it's that push. And then having all 3, that if needing to get out of there, to throw at the target, to throw at your adversary. I like that technique. But like I said earlier, what does it matter when, as long as you're throwing it, that's what matters. There's 4 of them, and chaos is going to take over rapidly. In many ways, you could just throw it any way you want. So as a tetsu-bishi, again, if it falls, it lands 1 point up. What I want to point out here, unless this is on glass or on ceramic, something very smooth, the teeth bind in with just a little bit of force. So there's a technique in which you can use your feet to clear, or at least find a way as a clear path. Because if you were using your foot to do this, it's just going to lift you up. But that's not the only part that makes it interesting, because chaos, and they can be thrown, and depending what happens, If they enter the ground like that, not only does stepping make it more dangerous, because as your foot goes onto it and it changes angle, it's going to rip. If you're stepping and sweeping too fast, you're going to get caught on these 2 points specifically. Jumping topics then. So in the fact that you've used them, how do you deal with them? Personally, as someone that's spent the last week making and thinking upon these, I don't want to lift my feet. I am constantly counting them. I need to come to the same number, and if I don't, it's kind of a freeze to look at it. Always check the floor first and then the table. I've miscounted once, and it's scary because it wouldn't take much for that to enter into the foot. Simply, the foot is always on the ground. The back foot comes up. If this is the foot, this is the ground. This comes through and keeps contact with that first foot and sweeps. Then this foot follows through because we know that area is clear and it's just little by little. I would never want to go up against something like this of today. That's just, you just got to stop. You got to find a new way around. The few techniques there is to get through it work well on surfaces with control, but that sweeping step in ground, no thank you. Find a new way around. You're not going to see it, but now we've got that added, it can push into the ground and change orientation with very little push. Now adding to, simple little tool, this is clean and cleaned with peppermint oil. I could have also, just time period wise, let it rust. That this could be poisoned, making it not only super dangerous to touch just simply once, but I think in this case, more so for the actual person using it. Now I need to make sure I never get stabbed with this thing. So I don't like the idea of poisoning these ones. I really like the idea that it's a very clean coat. And side note, the little midgy bugs, they have found me despite being protected by my tree. Very cool tool, very simple to use, lots of growth. I don't know, it's definitely a ninjutsu thing to think, hey, can I tie a rope or chain to that? Then what happens? I think one thing happens for me, that I like the idea that I'm getting everything back again. I'm fine if it's played its part and it's been used appropriately, then it can go. Hour and a half worth of work, I'm attached to it. But what if, side note, I saw a picture of this in a scroll once with stars attached to rope. It was referring to tetsubishi, but it looked like Sanben Shuriken. But take all of that from, what if ropes were attached to these? And you had a space in between that you could lay out a trap. The rope would sit underneath the grass, or at least on the ground. You could disguise it, or make it a path that you have to follow through. And it's got, well, it only needs to have this much clearance, that much even better, because then it's not out of sight. And then you could put a kunai into the ground and tie it all off. So if people do get trapped in it, they can't even go too far. They can't even go too far. I think like I've lost points for that sentence. My point being, they're going to stick around because this would be stuck in the ground. That was not meant to rhyme. This is 9 tetsubishi attached to roughly 12 feet of rope. The best part of this, from my perspective, I can carry this and grab 9 instantaneously. I could throw this just like that. But then it could also be used against me just as equally, and that seems dumb. But I think as a trap, not only just as a trap, as setting a trap, but also using this just as a rope. I'm jumping topics here. Because I can use this as a rope, no matter what you do of batting that away, it's connected to a flexible tool. So it will wrap around, put like a bubble in that and just throw it away for a moment, just to pause to state the question, to state the statement. If I have a bunch of these being thrown at me, if I know what it is or not know what it is, if I bat that away, I'm in trouble. I have to retreat from this tool to protect myself from the tool. But I feel if a bunch of them get thrown at me with surprise, a part of me is going to try to protect myself, especially if it's going for this face. I like my eyes, and I'd rather probably, even not thinking, get it stuck in my hand. So it's an option to retreat, to bat them away. Also an option to retreat and bat them away. But being flexible tool, it can now wrap around it. Nice way of carrying it, but with that one little pull, this, which I think is just a great Christmas. And now it's opened up, which now I have just roughly 8 feet of the prettiest Christmas decoration you have ever seen to be laid in the ground. Hidden by leaves, and have this tied off, which I think is great. But what makes it better, if I hold the first of 9, and then I hold, what's that, number 4, and now I think of this as, oh, I could change this up even more ways. I'm thinking right now that if this is thought as a 3-sectional staff, you always keeping that distance with your hands to control the movement. With this one, all I need is to change distances, because right now I'm under a tree. And as long as I keep that hand tight, or not that hand tight, but the tension between the string and the spinny part, it's not going to get in the way. So then with more room, or throwing it like a gnat, throw this one entire piece to wrap around an opponent. I think at that point, I'm not looking to run away. I'm looking to get this back again. So not so much of a makeshift, but I think this is a very convenient way to store them, but also to use it as a fighting tool. Now, wrapping it back up again, that's a technique all on its own. But if I only have one of them, and we all have to carry around a rope, there's a story of that you always carry a rope. There's the story of, it's not a story. One of the main tools is a rope that is just remained as a rope. You wouldn't have anything tied onto it because that makes you stand out. But what farmer wouldn't be able to have a rope? So you could tie a rock to the end of it. But in this case, you've got one of these. Why not? It's its own little meteor hammer. Now, again, another parenthesis to jump back to the making of it. This is a high carbon steel that's been heat treated for the benefit of keeping these very sharp, not for the benefit to keep this very springy. Now, this is springy, but it's not very springy. This will break. It is more brittle. You don't want that for a meteor hammer. But I'm thinking of this more as of an impromptu tool. So much like, and now we have access to 12 feet and my own personal, this is my thagomizer. I'm not good at naming things, but I didn't name the thagomizer. And the thagomizer on the back of a stegosaurus are spikes that go out at the end of the tail that it would use to attack whatever was, well, attacking it. It's my own little thagomizer. When I thought here, well, one, anything that's flexible like this is used to keep people at bay. You have to now enter into this circle, and I can control that by when this comes at you. And again, like that, all shuriken, I can choose when this goes towards the opponent to then wait for that opening that the attack can happen. And this thing, it's going to stick around. If this hits into the body or even wraps around, it's such a distraction. I really like tetsubishi. They still scare the hell out of me. I don't like them. I don't like them outside. And for a point of the civilized world today, I'm glad they're not in it. This is just terrible for any bystander that goes through those areas. I like the idea of imagining an imaginary time where war is upon, and that's what you have to deal with. Only theoretical. To be pulling this out of my foot, I've thought about it. I've thought about it. No, of course I would, but no thank you. Carrying tetsubishi, when they're attached to the ropes, that's super easy. To have just a bag of them, well, it's going to have to be a leather bag or a bunch of layers of cotton. And when they settle, because of this shape, they really intertwine. So getting them out is going to take a moment. Currently, my best option is keeping them in a bag for travel if I want to actually use them. For storage, a wooden box that has a nice tight lid so they can't fall open. But for retrieval, that bag is not going to be time efficient. Currently, in my imagination, I see, and I'm using leather, which definitely wasn't used often in certain parts of Japan at this time period, but in the mountains areas it was, so I allow myself that opening. That if this had a piece of leather that it could sit upon, and it has a hole, this comes in and then another piece of leather goes over and a button, a closure, some sort of something, a knot that's able to be undone, which allow me quick access where it could be worn on the body, how it's transported. No matter what, there's going to be a pokey bit standing out, but it's also always aiming away from me. And this wouldn't be a tool for everyone or for every time, but to have some of them seems just so advantageous. But like the tetsu-bishi, the egg blinding powder, which were way stronger than I thought, they still need their own carrying component. This is the same grounds, just in different ways. That was to protect it, so it didn't break, and this is to protect me, so I don't break. When throwing these, when distributing them on the ground, outside, yeah, no worries, throw them as you want. And I did a few tests, just mere chaos will allow a few of these to stick in, which means that you could also just take the opportunity to continually on the floor, that if there's already enough of a distraction, you can get away with making the noise. I'm just going to take that as like a granted. Just distribute where you want them. Also, these ones have spring, but there's also a lot of strength because of that spring. Thinking of a time where with sliding doors, these pieces could be pushed into the floor and pushed into the actual frame of the sliding door, or just this directly in line with the sliding door. Multiple ways of using this one tool to just, well, slightly, it's going to stop that door from being open. Now it's a shoji. Those doors are light paper and wood. You could pop right through them if you absolutely had to. But again, to add just a few seconds of getaway, and simply just having two. I like the idea of having them inside the fingers to be able to be thrown. But as I'm talking, I look down and this hand is just holding 3 of them with the point going inside, but it's inside my fingers. And now I wouldn't want to put a lot of energy pushing back. I still wouldn't. It's going to eventually backfire. But to receive blows, just to accept, like I can back it up with my thumb. I can distribute some force. Yeah, that's awesome and nasty. That is being supported by my hand, and I am applying that pressure across with no issue. No issue. Okay, these things are slowly getting cooler and cooler. I think 3 at a time, if they're made correctly. but not in this orientation, nope. If you want a chance of punching with them, 1. Just try 2, hurts immediately. This is such a tool. I didn't want to make these, they're just too nasty. But they are a part of the history, and I need to understand a little bit more, and I'm surprised on how versatile they are and for what different uses they could be, and how many things you could make this out of just from sheer nature and items that are just laying around. These ones are made from very specific steel, but nails twisted with wire. You could take just small steel and cut it with clippers. There's just so many methods to make this one safety tool. But don't get wrong, this thing is dangerous. Like using nunchaku for the first time. You got a higher chance of hitting yourself than doing really anything else damage. This has a high chance of hurting the user. Oh, these are great. Okay, I'm getting back to work.